The morning sun cast long shadows across the polished marble floors of Kensington Palace as Prince William walked through the familiar corridors. His footsteps echoed softly in the silence, a sound that had become almost comforting in recent months. The palace, usually bustling with staff and visitors, felt unusually quiet this Tuesday morning in early autumn. William had always found solace in these early morning walks through the palace. It was his time to think, to process the weight of his responsibilities, and to remember his mother. Today felt different, though. There was a heaviness in the air, a sense that something important was about to happen. The letter had arrived 3 days ago, delivered by a nervous-looking Palace aide who seemed reluctant to hand it over. The envelope was worn and yellowed with age, addressed in handwriting that made William's heart skip a beat. He recognized the careful script immediately. It was his mother's handwriting, as familiar to him as his own reflection. Princess Diana had written this letter 25 years ago, just months before her tragic death in Paris. The letter had been locked away in a private vault, specific instructions that it should only be delivered to William when he turned 40. That milestone had passed just months ago. Now he held in his hands what might be his mother's final message to him. William had read the letter countless times since receiving it, but today he was finally ready to follow its instructions. Diana had written about a secret she had kept hidden, something she had never told anyone, not even Charles. She wrote about a promise she had made to someone very special, a promise that she hoped William would help her keep even after her death. The letter spoke of a door in the palace, a door that most people walked past without a second thought. It was located in the East Wing, in a section that had been unused for decades. Diana's letter contained detailed directions, almost like a treasure map, leading to this forgotten corner of the royal residence. As William made his way through the corridors, he thought about his mother's words. She had written about regret, about chances not taken, and words left unsaid. But more than anything, she had written about love, a love so pure and selfless that it had shaped some of the most important decisions of her life. The East Wing felt colder than the rest of the palace. Dust particles danced in the streams of sunlight that filtered through tall, narrow windows. Many of these rooms had been closed off for years, used only for storage, or left completely empty. William's security detail had wanted to accompany him, but he had insisted on making this journey alone. Some things he felt were too personal to share. Following his mother's directions, William turned left at the portrait of King George III, then walked straight until he reached a tapestry depicting a medieval hunting scene. Behind this tapestry, Diana had written, was a narrow corridor that led to a series of small rooms once used by Palace staff in the Victorian era. William found the tapestry exactly where his mother had described it. His hands trembled slightly as he lifted the heavy fabric, revealing a wooden door that looked like it hadn't been opened in decades. The brass handle was tarnished with age, and small spider webs had formed in the corners of the doorframe. The door creaked loudly as William pushed it open, revealing a narrow corridor that stretched into darkness. The air smelled musty and old, filled with the scent of forgotten years. William used his phone's flashlight to illuminate the way forward, his footsteps muffled by a thin layer of dust that covered the wooden floor. At the end of the corridor, just as his mother had described, was another door. This one was painted green, though the paint had faded and chipped over the years. On the door was a small brass nameplate, so tarnished that William had to wipe it clean with his sleeve to read the words engraved there. What he read made his breath catch in his throat. The nameplate bore a name he had never heard before, yet somehow felt connected to. According to his mother's letter, behind this green door lived someone who had played a crucial role in Diana's life. Someone who had helped shape the woman she became and the choices she made. Diana had written that this person had been living in these forgotten rooms for decades, sustained by a small pension and the kindness of a few trusted palace staff members who brought food and supplies. It was an arrangement that Diana had secretly maintained, ensuring that this person was cared for and protected. Hidden away from the public eye and the pressures of royal life, the letter explained that this person had once been very important. to the royal family, but circumstances had forced them into hiding. Diana had discovered their existence by accident during her early years as a royal, and she had made it her mission to ensure their comfort and safety. It was a secret she had guarded carefully, visiting regularly but always discreetly. William's hand hovered over the door handle. His mother's letter had prepared him for this moment, but he still felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of what he was about to discover. Diana had written that this person held secrets about the royal family's past, stories that had never been told, and truths that had been carefully hidden for generations. More importantly, Diana had written about the emotional connection she had formed with this person. They had become like family to her, providing comfort and wisdom during some of her darkest moments. When Diana felt lost or overwhelmed by royal life, she would come to this quiet corner of the palace and find peace in the company of someone who understood her struggles in ways that few others could. The letter ended with a request that William continue what Diana had started. She wanted him to ensure that this person was never forgotten, never abandoned. She had set aside funds for their care and had made arrangements for their needs to be met. But she needed William to be the guardian of this secret, to carry on the tradition of compassion that she had begun. As William stood before the green door, he felt the weight of his mother's trust and the magnitude of the secret he was about to uncover. He knew that once he opened this door, his understanding of his family's history and his mother's legacy would change forever. Taking a deep breath, William grasped the handle and slowly began to turn it, preparing himself for whatever lay beyond. The door opened with surprising ease, as if it had been recently maintained, despite its forgotten appearance. William stepped into a small but comfortable sitting room that felt like stepping back in time. The space was warm and inviting, filled with furniture that belonged to a different era yet was clearly well cared for and loved. Afternoon sunlight streamed through a single window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the golden air. The room was decorated with photographs, dozens of them, covering every available surface. As William's eyes adjusted to the soft light, he began to recognize faces in those photographs, faces of royals from generations past, some he knew from history books, others completely unfamiliar to him. In the center of the room, sitting in a comfortable armchair beside a small fireplace, was an elderly woman. She appeared to be in her 80s, with silver hair neatly arranged and kind eyes that seemed to hold the wisdom of decades. She was dressed simply but elegantly, in a way that spoke of someone who had once known finer things but had learned to find contentment in simplicity. The woman looked up at William without surprise, as if she had been expecting him. Her face broke into a gentle smile that reminded him instantly of his mother. There was something in her expression, a familiar warmth that made William feel as though he had come home after a long journey. "You must be William," she said softly, her voice carrying a slight accent that William couldn't quite place. "Your mother told me you would come someday. You look so much like her, you know." She had the same kind eyes, the same gentle way of carrying herself. William stood frozen in the doorway, overwhelmed by the moment. The woman gestured to a chair across from her, and he moved forward as if in a dream. As he sat down, she poured tea from a delicate china set that looked like it belonged in a museum. The familiar ritual of afternoon tea felt surreal in this hidden corner of the palace. "I suppose you have questions," the woman continued, handing William a cup of tea. "Mother said you would, and she was right to prepare you as she did. My name is Margaret, though your mother always called me Maggie. I have been living in these rooms for 43 years, ever since the world decided I no longer existed." William found his voice at last. "Who are you? How did you know my mother? Why are you here?" Margaret's eyes grew distant, as if she were looking back across decades of memories. "I am your great-aunt, William, your grandfather's sister. I suppose that makes me your grandmother's sister-in-law, though the relationships in royal families can be complicated. I was erased from history books and family trees, but I never stopped being family." The revelation hit William like a physical blow. He had studied his family's genealogy extensively, knew the names and stories of countless relatives, yet he had never heard of Margaret. It was as if she had been completely removed from existence. "I don't understand," William said, setting down his teacup with trembling hands. "How is that possible? How can someone just disappear from a royal family?" Margaret smiled sadly. "It's easier than you might think, especially when it serves the family's interests. I fell in love, you see. Deeply, completely, impossibly in love with someone the family could never accept. In 1962, I was 25 years old and engaged to marry a man chosen by the family. A suitable match that would strengthen political alliances and maintain traditions." She stood up slowly and walked to the window, gazing out at the palace gardens, that she could see but never visit. But my heart belonged to someone else, someone wonderful and kind, and completely inappropriate by royal standards. When the family discovered our relationship, they gave me a choice: abandon the person I loved and fulfill my duty, or disappear forever. William felt his heart breaking as he listened to her story. It was a tale that echoed through generations, of royal history, duty versus love, tradition versus happiness. "What did you choose?" "I chose love," Margaret said simply. "I chose to follow my heart, even though it meant giving up everything else." The family arranged for my death to be announced. Quietly, a car accident in Switzerland, they said. A closed casket funeral was held, and Margaret Windsor ceased to exist in any official capacity. She returned to her chair and picked up one of the photographs from the side table. It showed a young woman who looked remarkably like Princess Diana, standing beside someone whose face had been carefully cut out of the picture. "Your mother found me by accident in 1982, just after she married your father. She was exploring the palace, as young brides do, trying to understand her new home. She heard music coming from these rooms and followed the sound. When she opened that door, she found me playing piano and singing to myself." Margaret's voice grew warm with the memory. Diana was so young then, so full of hope and dreams. She was also lonely and overwhelmed by royal life. She understood what it meant to feel trapped by duty and expectation. We became friends immediately. To women who knew what it was like to sacrifice for the crown, William realized he was crying without knowing when the tears had started. "She never told anyone about you?" "She promised she wouldn't, and Diana always kept her promises. But she did more than just keep my secret. She became my family. She visited me regularly, brought me news of the outside world, shared her joys and sorrows. When you and Harry were born, she brought pictures and told me stories about your first steps, your first words, your personalities." Margaret walked to a bookshelf and pulled out a thick photo album. As she opened it, William saw page after page of photographs, pictures of him and Harry as babies, as toddlers, as young boys, pictures of Diana at various royal events, candid shots of family moments, images that chronicled years of their lives. "Your mother brought me these photos so I could watch you grow up, even from a distance. She wanted me to know my great-nephews, even if I could never meet them. She would sit in that very chair where you're sitting now and tell me about your school plays, sports matches, your hopes and dreams." William was sobbing now, overwhelmed by the realization that this woman had been loving him and Harry from afar their entire lives. She had been present for their childhood in a way, witnessing their growth through Diana's stories and photographs. "After your mother died," Margaret continued softly, "I thought I would never hear about you again. The staff who brought me supplies were kind enough to share news from newspapers and magazines, but it wasn't the same. Diana had made you both so real to me, so present in my life. Without her stories, you became distant again." She closed the photo album and held it against her chest. "But she left instructions in that letter, didn't she? She wanted you to know about me, to understand. That love sometimes requires sacrifice, but it also creates bonds that death cannot break." Margaret's hand rested on the door handle, and William could see that she was gathering courage for whatever lay beyond. Her eyes held a mixture of joy and nervousness, like someone about to share their most treasured possession with the world. "Before I open this door," she said softly, "I want you to understand something about love, William. The world teaches us that love should be easy, that it should fit into neat categories and follow predictable patterns. But real love, the kind that changes you forever, is often more complex than that." She turned to face him fully, her expression serious but warm. "Your mother understood this. She knew that my love story didn't fit the traditional mold. But she also knew that genuine love, in any form, creates something beautiful in the world. She never judged, never questioned. She simply accepted and supported. Room. This one set up as a bedroom, with simple but comfortable furniture. In the bed, propped up against several pillows, was another elderly person. At first glance, William couldn't tell if it was a man or woman. Age and illness had softened their features, and they appeared to be sleeping peacefully. "This is Alex," Margaret said, her voice filled with such tenderness that William felt his throat tighten with emotion. "We have been together for 63 years. When I chose love over duty, this is who I chose." As if hearing their voices, Alex stirred and opened their eyes. William was struck immediately by the intelligence and warmth in their gaze, despite their obvious frailty. Alex's face broke into a smile when they saw Margaret. A smile so full of pure love that William felt like he was witnessing something sacred. "Is this him?" Alex asked, their voice weak but clear. "Is this Diana's boy?" Margaret nodded, tears streaming down her face. "This is William, darling. He came, just like she said he would." Alex struggled to sit up straighter, and William instinctively moved forward to help adjust the pillows. As he did, Alex grasped his hand with surprising strength. "You look so much like her," Alex whispered. "Your mother was an angel, William. She saved us in ways you can't imagine." William sat on the edge of the bed, still holding Alex's hand. "How did she save you?" Alex's eyes grew distant with memory. "When Margaret and I went into hiding, we thought we could handle anything as long as we had each other. But years of isolation take their toll. We had no family, no friends, no connection. To the world we had known, we were slowly disappearing, not just from public record, but from life itself." Margaret pulled a chair close to the bed and took Alex's other hand. "We were becoming ghosts, existing but not living. Then Diana found us, and everything changed." "Didn't just visit us," Alex continued, their voice growing stronger with emotion. "She brought life back into these rooms. She would tell us about the outside world, about music and movies and books. She brought us newspapers and magazines, helped us stay connected to the world beyond these walls." William realized that his mother had been doing much more than keeping a family secret. She had been preserving two lives, ensuring that Margaret and Alex didn't fade away entirely from existence. But more than that, Margaret added, she made us feel loved and valued again. She would ask our opinions about her speeches, seek our advice about raising you boys. She made us feel like we still had something to contribute, like our experiences and wisdom mattered. Alex squeezed William's hand. "When you were born, she brought us photos before anyone else saw them. We were the first people outside your immediate family to know about your arrival. She said we were your great-aunt, and—" Alex paused, looking at Margaret with a smile. "Your great-aunt's partner. She insisted that made us family." The word partner hung in the air, and William suddenly understood the full scope of what his mother had been protecting. In 1962, when Margaret had been forced to choose, same-sex relationships were not just socially unacceptable in royal circles, they were illegal in Britain. Margaret and Alex hadn't just been hidden because of royal protocol. They had been hidden to protect them from a society that could have destroyed them completely. "Your mother never used labels or tried to define our relationship," Margaret said, as if reading William's thoughts. "She simply saw two people who loved each other deeply and deserved respect and care. She treated us exactly as she would any other couple, with kindness, acceptance, and genuine affection." Alex's eyes filled with tears. "When she died, we thought our connection to the world would die with her. We prepared ourselves to fade away completely. But she had planned for that too." Margaret reached under the bed and pulled out a wooden box. Inside were letters, dozens of them, all in Diana's handwriting. She wrote us letters before she died, one for each month for the next 25 years. She arranged for a trusted staff member to deliver one to us every month, so we would continue to feel connected to her even after she was gone. William was sobbing now, overwhelmed by the depth of his mother's compassion and foresight. Even in death, she had continued to care for these forgotten members of their family. "The letters told us about you and Harry as you grew up, Alex said softly. You wrote about your personalities, your interests, your struggles, and triumphs. Through her words, we watched you both become the men you are today. Margaret opened one of the letters, dated just a few months ago. Listen to what she wrote about you recently. William is becoming the leader I always knew he could be. He has Charles's sense of duty, but with a warmth and accessibility that reminds me of myself. He understands that being royal isn't about being separate from people, it's about serving them with genuine care and compassion. She looked up at William with pride shining in her eyes. She was so proud of you, William. Every letter spoke of her love for you and Harry, her hopes for your futures, her confidence in your abilities to change the monarchy for the better. Alex struggled to lean forward, and William moved closer. She had one last request, William. She wanted us to tell you something when you finally came to visit us. William waited, his heart pounding. She wanted you to know that love is love. No matter what form it takes, Alex said, their voice growing stronger. She wanted you to understand that the royal family's greatest strength isn't its traditions or protocols. It's its capacity for love and acceptance. She hoped that by knowing our story, you would carry that understanding forward and help create a more inclusive and compassionate monarchy. Margaret nodded through her tears. She believed that you and Harry would be the generation to change things, to create a royal family that celebrates love in all its forms rather than hiding from it. William looked around the room at these two people who had loved each other for more than 6 decades, who had sacrificed everything for their love, and who had been sustained by his mother's compassion. He thought about the courage it had taken for them to choose love over safety, and the courage it had taken for his mother to support them despite the potential consequences. What do you need? William asked suddenly. What can I do to honor my mother's wishes and ensure you're both cared for? Alex and Margaret exchanged a look, and William saw a flicker of hope in both their eyes. William wiped his eyes with the back of his hand, struggling to process everything Margaret had told him. The small room suddenly felt charged with emotion and history, as if the walls themselves were holding decades of secrets and love. There's more, isn't there? William asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Oh, Mother's letter mentioned that you held secrets about our family's past. Margaret nodded slowly, her expression growing more serious. Your mother was right to prepare you. Gradually, some truths are too heavy to carry all at once. She walked to an old wooden chest in the corner of the room and opened it carefully, as if handling something precious and fragile. From the chest, she pulled out several leather-bound journals, their pages yellowed with age. These are my diaries, William. 43 years of observations, conversations, and discoveries made from this forgotten corner of the palace. When you live in the shadows, you see things that others miss. You hear conversations that people think are private. She handed him one of the journals, and William opened it to a random page. The handwriting was neat and careful, documenting events from the 1970s. As he read, he realized that Margaret had been recording significant moments in royal history, but from a unique perspective, the perspective of someone who was simultaneously inside and outside the family. I never intended to become a chronicler of royal secrets, Margaret explained, settling back into her chair. But isolation has a way of making you observant. Staff members would sometimes forget I existed and speak freely in the corridors outside my rooms. Visitors would discuss sensitive matters, thinking these old rooms were empty. William read entries about political decisions, family disputes, and personal struggles that had never been made public. Margaret had documented the human side of royal life, the fears, doubts, and private moments that the public never saw. Your grandmother, Queen Elizabeth, knew about me, Margaret said quietly. She never visited, but she made sure I was cared for. Once a year, on my birthday, she would send a small gift, usually flowers or a book. No note, no acknowledgement, but I knew they came from her. It was her way of saying that even though I had been erased officially, I hadn't been forgotten entirely. It's the revelation about his grandmother's secret kindness moved William deeply. He had always known her as a woman of duty and protocol, but this showed a more personal, compassionate side that few people ever witnessed. And your grandfather, Prince Philip, he visited me once, Margaret continued. It was about 10 years. After I had disappeared, he came late at night, when the palace was quiet. Sat in that chair where you're sitting now and apologized? William looked up from the journal, surprised. He apologized. He said he had always regretted the choice the family had forced me to make. He told me that times were changing, that maybe someday things would be different. He asked if I was happy, if I regretted my decision. Margaret's voice grew soft with the memory. I told him that love was worth any sacrifice, but I also told him how much I missed my family. She pulled out another journal, this one more recent. Your mother wasn't the only one who visited me over the years. Your Uncle Andrew came once when he was going through his own troubles with Sarah. He needed to talk to someone who understood what it meant to choose love over duty. We talked for hours about the weight of royal expectations. William felt overwhelmed by these revelations about his family members. The people he thought he knew so well had been carrying these secrets, maintaining this hidden connection to a woman who had been erased from their official history. Charles knew about me too, Margaret said, noticing William's expression. Your father visited me after your mother died. He was consumed with guilt, wondering if he could have done more to protect her, to make her happy. I told him what Diana had told me, that she never regretted loving him, even when their marriage struggled. The mention of his parents' relationship brought fresh tears to William's eyes. What did my mother tell you about their marriage? Margaret's expression grew tender. She loved your father deeply, William. Even when things were difficult between them, even when she felt lost and alone, she never stopped loving him. She told me that Charles was a good man caught between his heart and his duty, just like she was. She understood his struggles because they mirrored her own. She opened the journal to a specific page, marked with a pressed flower. She wrote me letters sometimes when visiting wasn't possible. Listen to this. She wrote it just months before she died. Margaret's voice grew emotional as she read Diana's words. Maggie, I've been thinking about choices and regrets, about the paths we take and the ones we leave behind. I watched Charles struggle with the weight of being heir to the throne, and I see in him the same pain you must have felt when you were forced to choose between love and duty. I chose duty when I married him, thinking love would follow. Sometimes it did, beautifully and completely. But love is complicated when the whole world is watching. Margaret paused, wiping away a tear. I hope William and Harry will learn from our mistakes. I hope they'll understand that the heart doesn't always follow protocol, and that sometimes the most royal thing you can do is choose happiness over expectation. You chose love, Maggie, and even though it cost you everything officially, I think, you chose correctly. The room fell silent, except for the soft ticking of an antique clock on the mantelpiece. William felt as though he was seeing his mother's inner thoughts for the first time, understanding her struggles and hopes in a way that her public persona had never revealed. She was planning to tell you and Harry about me, Margaret said softly. She wanted to wait until you were older, until you could understand the complexities of royal life and family duty. She thought that knowing about me might help you navigate your own choices someday. William closed the journal and looked around the room with new eyes. This wasn't just a hiding place, it was a sanctuary where his mother had found wisdom and comfort, where family members had come to process their struggles and seek understanding. The person you loved, William asked suddenly. What happened to them? Margaret's face lit up with a smile that transformed her features. That, my dear nephew, is perhaps the most beautiful part of this story. But it's also the reason your mother wanted you to come here yourself, to see with your own eyes what love can create when it's nurtured with patience and devotion. She stood up and walked to a door at the far end of the room, a door that William hadn't noticed before. Some secrets are too precious to tell. They must be witnessed. The question hung in the air like a bridge between the past and the future. Margaret and Alex looked at each other with expressions that spoke of conversations they had held in private, dreams they had whispered in the darkness of their hidden rooms. We don't need much, Margaret said finally, her voice trembling with emotion. We've learned to live with very little, and at our age, material things matter less than they once did. Alex nodded slowly, their eyes never leaving William's face. But there is something we've dreamed about for decades, something your mother promised us might be possible someday when the world was ready. William leaned forward, sensing the importance of what they were about to say. Tell me, Margaret. Walked to the window and gazed out at the palace gardens. "We've been in these rooms for 43 years, William. We've watched the seasons change through this single window. But we've never felt grass beneath our feet or breathed fresh air without fear of discovery."
Yes.
"We dream of walking in the garden," Alex said softly. "Just once before we die, we want to hold hands in the sunlight without shame or fear. We want to feel like we belong somewhere in this world instead of existing in the shadows." The simplicity of their request broke William's heart. These two people, who had loved each other for over 6 decades, wanted nothing more than to walk together in the open air, to experience the basic human dignity of existing without hiding. "Your mother used to describe the gardens to us," Margaret continued, still looking out the window. "She would tell us about the roses in bloom, the way the light fell through the trees, the sound of birds singing in the morning. Through her words, we learned to love a place we could never visit." William stood up abruptly, his decision made. "Come with me, both of you, right now." Margaret and Alex stared at him in shock. "William, we can't," Margaret protested. There is no risk," William said firmly. "I'm the future king of England, and I'm inviting my great-aunt and her partner to walk in my garden. Anyone who has a problem with that can answer to me." Alex struggled to sit up straighter. "But I'm not well enough for," William was already moving, his mind racing with solutions. "We'll get you a wheelchair, or I'll carry you if I have to. But you're going to see those gardens today, and you're going to do it with dignity and without fear." Tears streamed down Margaret's face. "You sure? After all these years of hiding, it seems impossible that we could simply ... walk outside." "My mother believed that love should be celebrated, not hidden," William said, his voice strong with conviction. "She spent decades protecting you and ensuring your safety. Now it's my turn to honor that protection by giving you the freedom she always wanted you to have." Within an hour, William had arranged everything. A wheelchair had been brought for Alex, along with warm coats and blankets. He had also quietly informed his security team of the situation, asking for their discretion and protection. The head of security, a man who had served the royal family for 30 years, simply nodded and said, "It would be our honor, Your Highness." As they prepared to leave the hidden rooms, Alex reached for William's hand. "I need you to understand something," they said urgently. "If anyone questions our presence, if this causes any problems for you or your family—" "Stop," William interrupted gently. "You are my family. You've been part of this family for 43 years, even if the world didn't know it. I'm not hiding you anymore." The journey from the forgotten rooms to the palace gardens felt like traveling through time. Margaret walked slowly beside Alex's wheelchair, which William pushed with careful attention to every bump and uneven surface. As they moved through corridors that Margaret hadn't seen in decades, she pointed out changes and remembered aloud the palace as it had been in her youth. When they reached the garden door, William paused. "Are you ready?" Margaret nodded, her hand resting on Alex's shoulder. "We've been ready for 43 years." William opened the door, and afternoon sunlight flooded over them. Margaret gasped audibly, raising her hand to shield her eyes from the brightness. Alex took a deep, shuddering breath, as if trying to inhale decades of mist fresh air all at once. The palace gardens stretched before them in autumn splendor. Golden leaves carpeted the pathways, and late-season flowers added splashes of color to the carefully maintained landscape. The air was crisp and clean, filled with the scents of earth and growing things. "It's more beautiful than I imagined," Margaret whispered, tears streaming down her face. William pushed the wheelchair slowly along the main path, allowing them to take in every detail. Alex reached out to touch the bark of trees they passed, marveling at textures they had only dreamed about. Margaret bent down to pick up a fallen leaf, holding it like a precious treasure. They walked in comfortable silence for several minutes, each lost in their own emotions. Finally, they reached a secluded section of the garden, where a bench sat beneath an ancient oak tree. William helped Alex from the wheelchair to the bench, then sat beside them, as Margaret settled on Alex's other side. "Your mother used to sit on this exact bench," Margaret said, looking around with wonder. "She described it to us so many times that I feel like I've been here before." Alex leaned against Margaret's shoulder, and she wrapped her arms around them protectively. For the first time in decades, they were holding each other in the open air, under the vast sky, without fear or shame. "Thank you," Alex said to William, their voice barely above a whisper. "This is the most beautiful gift anyone has ever given us." William watched them together and felt something shift in his understanding of love and family. These two people had sacrificed everything for each other and had been sustained by hope and the kindness of his mother. Their love had endured decades of hiding, illness, loneliness, and uncertainty, yet it remained as strong as ever. "I want to ask you something," William said, after they had sat in peaceful silence for a while. "Would you consider letting me arrange for you to have better accommodations? Perhaps a small cottage on the estate, with your own garden, somewhere you could live openly as yourselves?" Margaret and Alex looked at each other with expressions of amazement. "You would do that?" Margaret asked. "It's what my mother would have wanted," William replied. "And it's what you deserve. You've hidden long enough. It's time for you to live freely." Alex began to cry softly, overwhelmed by the possibility of a life without hiding. "We never dared to hope for such a thing. After so many years, we learned to be grateful for simply surviving." Margaret squeezed Alex's hand. "But what about the family? What about tradition and public opinion? We wouldn't want our presence to cause difficulties for you or the monarchy." William considered her words carefully. The world had changed dramatically since 1962, but he knew that revealing the existence of hidden royal relatives would still create controversy. Yet as he looked at these two people who had loved each other through decades of adversity, he felt certain that his mother's values should guide his decision. "The monarchy survives by evolving," William said finally. "My mother understood that. She knew that our strength comes not from rigidly maintaining old prejudices, but from demonstrating compassion and acceptance. If we can't protect and celebrate the love between two people who have been part of our family for over 40 years, then what are we really protecting?" A gentle breeze stirred the autumn leaves around them, and Margaret tilted her face up too. "Feel the sun on her skin. Your mother would be so proud of the man you've become," she said softly. "She always believed you would help change the world for the better." As the afternoon wore on, they shared stories and memories. Margaret told William about his mother's private struggles and triumphs, revealing a side of Diana that the public had never seen. Alex spoke about their early life together, the joy they had found in each other despite the world's disapproval, the quiet contentment they had discovered in their hidden existence. When the sun began to set, casting long shadows across the garden, William knew their time outside was drawing to a close. Something fundamental had changed in those few hours. The secret that had been buried for 43 years was finally emerging into the light. And with it came the possibility of healing and acceptance that his mother had always envisioned. "There's one more thing," William said as they prepared. "To return inside, I want you to meet Catherine and the children. They should know about you, about this part of our family's story." Margaret and Alex exchanged a look of surprise and delight. "Your wife and children?" Margaret asked. "You would introduce us to them?" "Your family," William said simply. "Right. It's time everyone knew that." As they made their way back toward the palace, William felt his mother's presence strongly, as if she were walking beside them, finally seeing her dream of acceptance and love come to fruition. The door that had hidden Margaret and Alex for so long was about to open permanently, and, with it, a new chapter in their family's story would begin. 3 months later, the small cottage on the Windsor estate glowed warmly in the evening light. Through the windows, William could see Margaret moving about the kitchen, preparing tea with the same careful grace she had shown in her hidden rooms. The cottage garden, though still young, was already showing signs of the love and attention that both Margaret and Alex were pouring into it. William knocked gently on the front door, carrying a bundle of letters that had arrived that morning. When Margaret opened the door, her face lit up with the joy that had become her constant expression since moving to the cottage. "William, come in, come in. Alex is in the sitting room, and we have wonderful news to share." Both Margaret and Alex had been remarkable. The cottage had large windows that filled every room with natural light, and they had slowly begun to rediscover the world beyond their hidden existence. Alex, though still frail, had gained strength. From the fresh air and freedom, her eyes were brighter, their voice stronger, and they moved with a purpose that had been missing for decades. "These came for you today," William said, handing Margaret the bundle of letters. "It seems word is spreading about your existence, despite our efforts to keep things private." Margaret sat down beside Alex on the comfortable sofa they had chosen. Together, their first piece of furniture selected freely in over 40 years. She opened the first letter carefully, then looked up at William with tears in her eyes. "This is from a woman in Scotland," she said, her voice trembling with emotion. "She says that her grandmother was forced to hide her relationship with another woman in the 1950s. She's thanking us for showing that love can endure, even in the darkest circumstances." Alex reached for another letter. This one is from a young man whose parents rejected him when he came out. Says that knowing we found acceptance in the royal family gives him hope that his own family might change their hearts. William felt a deep warmth spreading through his chest when he had decided to gradually reveal Margaret and Alex's existence. He had expected controversy and criticism. Instead, the response had been overwhelmingly positive. People seemed hungry for stories of love triumphing over adversity, of families choosing acceptance over tradition. "There's something else," Margaret said, setting the letters aside. "We've made a decision, and we wanted to discuss it with you first." Alex took Margaret's hand, and William could see the same nervous excitement in their eyes that he had witnessed on their first day in the garden. "We want to share our story publicly," Alex said. "Not just the fact that we exist, but the whole story, your mother's kindness, the years of hiding, the love that sustained us through everything." William was quiet for a moment, considering the implications. "Are you certain, once that story is out there, your privacy will be gone forever? There'll be scrutiny, questions, probably some criticism?" Margaret nodded firmly. "We've discussed this extensively. For 43 years, we lived in fear and secrecy. These past few months have shown us what life can be like when lived openly and honestly. We want other people to know that it's possible." Your mother believed in the power of storytelling, Alex added. "She understood that sharing our struggles and triumphs could help others facing similar challenges. We want to honor her memory by continuing that work." William felt a surge of pride and admiration for these two remarkable people. At their age, after everything they had endured, they were choosing courage over comfort, hoping to help others by sharing their truth. "If that's what you want," William said, "then I'll support you completely. But I want you to know that you'll have the full protection and resources of the royal family behind you." Margaret smiled through her tears. "There's one more thing. We want to establish a foundation in Diana's name, something that supports young people who are struggling with family acceptance, particularly those in traditional or conservative families who feel they have to choose between love and belonging. The Diana Spencer Foundation for Family Acceptance," Alex said softly. "We've already begun planning it, using some of the resources Diana left for our care. We want to turn our hidden years into something meaningful, something that can help prevent other people from having to make the choice we made." William was speechless for a moment, overwhelmed by the generosity of spirit these two people continued to show. Even after decades of sacrifice and hiding, their first thought was how they could help others. "She would be so proud," William finally managed to say. This is exactly what she would have wanted, turning pain into purpose, using love to heal the world. Over the following months, Margaret and Alex's story captured hearts around the world. Their interview, conducted in their cottage garden with William present for support, became one of the most watched programs in television history. They spoke with quiet dignity about their love, their years of hiding, and Diana's crucial role in sustaining them. The response was extraordinary. Letters poured in from around the globe, from elderly couples who had hidden their relationships for decades, from young people finding the courage to come out to their families, from parents learning to accept their children's identities. The Diana Spencer Foundation grew rapidly, funded by donations from people inspired by Margaret and Alex's story. Most importantly, their courage sparked conversations in families and communities that had been avoiding difficult topics for generations. Love, they proved, was indeed stronger than fear, tradition, or prejudice. On the first anniversary of their public revelation, William visited Margaret and Alex in their cottage garden. The space had been transformed into a beautiful sanctuary, with raised beds full of vegetables and flowers, winding paths lined with fragrant herbs, and comfortable seating areas where they could sit and watch the sunset together. "Any regrets?" William asked as they sat beneath the apple tree they had planted in Diana's memory. Margaret and Alex looked at each other with the same deep love that had sustained them for over 6 decades. "None," Margaret said firmly. "For the first time in our lives, we're exactly who we're meant to be, living exactly as we choose to live." Alex squeezed her hand. "Your mother's greatest gift to us wasn't just survival. It was hope. Hope that someday love would be stronger than fear, that families could grow and change, that the future could be better than the past." As the sun set over their garden, William thought about the door he had opened months ago and the profound changes that had followed. His mother's letter had led him to more than just a family secret. It had led him to a deeper understanding of love, courage, and the power of acceptance to transform lives. The hidden chapter of their family story was hidden no more, and the world was brighter for it. In the growing darkness of evening, the cottage windows glowed warmly, illuminating 2 figures sitting close together, finally free to love each other in the light.